Welcome back to day 4 of the dopamine detox, and today I'm going to be talking about how to help others become more conscious and how to help them reach more mindful states of being. And as you progress along this journey to become more mindful, to become more present, you start enjoying life more. You start noticing reflections and textures on items that you didn't notice before. You start seeing the world in more detail, and it's this incredible beauty. And one amazing thing that you can look at is when I look at my nieces right now and I see them and I see how they're looking at the world, what catches their attention, where their eyes are going to, because of the mirror neurons the humans have, I can somewhat experience what they're thinking through their facial expressions, and I can see what they're focusing on. And by examining them and watching how a child looks at the world, it's such a beautiful thing because they are seeing everything for the first time. They're examining the textures on everything. They're looking at how the light passes through it. They're not putting labels of ball and cat or something else on items and then looking away from them. They're actually examining every single part of it, and they'll find the most mundane, the most simple of things fascinating. So with that being said, how to help others be more mindful, how to help others be more present. And I have many friends, I have many people in my life who are still in the work mode of constantly thinking about activities that need to be done, thinking about what they're going to do next, and they can never be present in the moment. They play music constantly between activities because, as they put it, their mind is going 100 miles per hour, and having the music, having the audiobooks helps them focus. When you try to suggest that they be mindful, they think you're asking them to do more. And a lot of these people are very stressed out. And when you suggest mindfulness, like, I have no time already. You want me to start meditating? You want me to start, you want me to somehow fit this other activity into my life? And there's a book, How to Train Your Mind, which talks about how meditation actually helps you be more productive, but it's going to be extremely difficult to get those people to actually read a book because they're so stressed out. They're going to say they don't have time to do it. So the goal, of course, is to help them reach that state. And you can do that by hanging out with them, by going for long walks with them, by doing things on the weekends or doing activities with them and showing them how to enjoy life, showing them cool and interesting things to do. And at first, you might have to go to some higher extremes like jumping off rocks into water or really interesting places, taking them on vacation. And this is what they need to actually switch out of the work mode, because they need so much stimulation to overpower the thoughts going through their head. But eventually, over time, you'll be able to just take them on a walk, and this will help them get mindful. Because for a lot of people, if you've never had an experience of higher levels of consciousness, if you've never had an experience of being fully present in the moment, it's difficult to show them what they're going to get. They're looking at you and they're like, of course I'm present, of course I'm conscious. Like, what do you mean I'm not conscious? Like, I can make decisions, and what the decisions I make, like, I'm not a robot. Like, of course I'm conscious. Like, they have no idea how they fall into the same patterns over and over, and how little control they actually have over their life. And if you try to tell someone that, they think you're talking bad about them. Like, what do you mean I'm not conscious? And then they think you're insulting them, so they go into this whole ego defense, and you're kind of sitting there looking at them like, man, I love you. And like, you see the ego defense working in their head, and you're like, oh, I'm not trying to insult you. Like, I want to share this beautiful experience I'm having. I want to share this new thing I discovered with you, but they've never experienced it. So you need to take them on walks away from their phone and encourage them to put down their phone a little bit. If you pester them too much, though, they will ignore you. They'll stop doing activities. But if you can show them by hanging out with them how much you enjoy life, then they might come to you and be like, hey man, how do you do it? Or seeing as you are the sum of the 5 people you hang out with most, you can actually bring them up to your energy level. You do have to be conscious enough to not get brought down to theirs, because depending on how many people are in your lives and what's going on, you can get brought down in energy by hanging out with people who are much lower energy levels than you. But with that said, show them the experience. For me, when I put down my phone in Europe and I started examining the world, my screen time went down to almost nothing, and I had like this awakening. I'm like, I want to do everything I can to be in that state of mind more, to be conscious for more of my day. And I mean, if you've made it this far in the video, if you've been watching this channel, I'm sure you've had at least a moment of higher levels of consciousness, and you're wondering, how do I maintain that? How do I stay there longer? And part of what I'm doing right now is detoxing, because I have the question of knowledge. Like, I keep over consuming it, which when I'm listening to an audiobook and driving, I'm not really fully present with the driving part. When I listen to an audiobook and I'm doing chores, I'm not fully present with the chore I'm doing. So reading audiobooks on how to become present while not being present is this contradiction I have, and I'm looking to solve that. I'm cutting out YouTube, Spotify, Audible, all this stuff that gives you knowledge. It gives you a sense of you're moving forward, you're moving in the right direction. Because as I see it, presence in your state of consciousness, like, if you can raise that up, that should be everyone's sole focus, because at higher levels of consciousness, it's easier to make changes. It's easier to do whatever you want to do, because you're more aware of the thoughts going through your head, how things trigger you, or how patterns trigger off, how negative beliefs work, negative self-talk. And with information so ready and so available, like, I love having conversations with ChatGPT and talking about it with consciousness and different revelations I have, and getting, I don't want to say its perspective, but seeing as ChatGPT is a summation of human history, of human language, it's kind of a person, because in order to predict what a person is going to say next, it needs to have a brain of a person. And I know it doesn't have a brain, I know it's a computer, but when you train all these neural networks to predict the next word, it's kind of what a human mind does, because it's taking all the knowledge that it's been trained on and it's using that. And it's really, if you think about it at higher levels, it's what a human is doing when it's talking. I mean, it can't tap into the highest levels of energy, but it can look at the writings of people who have experienced those levels, and it can talk to you from while referencing their writings, especially if you feed it a PDF of a book and you ask it to have a conversation with you as if you're the author of that book, as if it was the author of that book. Then you can like have one-on-one conversations with these authors and kind of get their advice on topics, which is truly amazing that you can do this. But with knowledge being so present, the true benefit that you can have, the true leg up you can have in society today, is being able to act upon that action, that knowledge, being able to reset your dopamine levels, get rid of the constant spikes from social media, the constant spikes from TikTok, and get to a level of being present and being in state, so that you're not craving the constant distractions. And when you're finally present and you're in state with what you're doing, and you're no longer needing to distract yourself, you can do the few tasks that you actually need to do. Not to mention, you can get insights by holding stuff and questions in your head and consciously holding it there and seeing what presents itself. This is something that happens at higher levels of consciousness. When you're more present, insights give themselves to you. Einstein discovered relativity by holding the question of how can the speed of light be constant at different reference frames in his mind. And he realized that that is because time is not always constant depending on the reference frame. Like, if Einstein can get that from a revelation, can get that from holding the question, it might have taken him 10 years while he was working at that patent office to hold that question in his head, but he finally got the answer to it, and that's general relativity. If you look at all the breakthroughs in science we've had, how are those made? It's not made by someone looking up previous work. They're made by a person holding a question in their head for long enough until the correct answer presents itself. And I'm not saying never look at books, never look at other material, never ask others for advice, because if you hold a question in your head and you ask others for their advice, a lot of the time you can find the solutions. But one thing that is detrimental, at least for myself, is trying to accumulate all the knowledge I can, always trying to accumulate knowledge, always trying to learn stuff so that I'll have all the answers. Because there's just too much knowledge out there, man. There's not enough time in the day, and your life is finite. If you had eternity, you might be able to do this if the human mind could hold all that information in there. But you need to work smarter with it. You need not waste the time. And I do say waste the time because when you're constantly trying to learn, you're not being present. And there's a time for learning and there's a time for presence. But if you can elevate your presence, if you can elevate your consciousness, then the insights will give themselves to you. So that's what I'm doing, because I might only be studying certain areas of life, but a question will arise in the future about an area that I never studied. But if I always focus on higher levels of consciousness, on being more aware, then I can have intuition about whatever presents itself. Intuition is not limited to the fields that you thought were important enough to actually put your time towards studying. With that being said, another thing, give me a second, wait for the jogger to go by. Another thing that I found is the more aware I am, the more present I am, the less often I stare at the ground while I'm walking. So many people you see, and they're staring like this. But now when you start noticing more detail, you start looking up, you start looking to other areas, you start looking at the trees and looking at how the light passes through the leaves. And it's a very interesting thing to see. And I'm going to play with this idea more and notice if it's a clear correlation between people who are constantly looking down and their presence, their state of mind. See what else is on the docket for today. I do keep voice notes on my phone of insights I have to talk about on these videos. So I think I mentioned textures and reflections becoming a lot more detailed. It's gonna make you itch insane amounts, but oh, look at that little bug. It's very beautiful. I think it's poison oak. I do believe that it's poison oak, but I am not a botanist by any stretch of the imagination. I do know that is poison ivy, and I am itching looking at it. But back on the docket, information is meditation, Make videos trying to. I'm not sure if I mentioned this. Work mode. You can be working, you can get stuff done, but the whole point of being present is to enjoy the work, enjoy the moments between when you're doing tasks. When you're in the car, use that as a chance to rest your mind and allow it to relax on the present moment, because that is what you're doing. When you become present, you're allowing your mind to relax. You're letting go of the thoughts in your head. You're letting go of the constant need to overthink. And it is a relaxation exercise. And you're relaxing into the present moment. And it's not something you force. It is very much something that you relax into. So being more present not only allows you to have higher levels of thinking, but it allows your mind, and it might be a correlation here, because your mind is more relaxed, you can have these higher levels of thinking because it's not constantly being overtaxed. When you're constantly absorbing knowledge and you're never giving your mind a chance to relax, you just don't get as much out of it. And one thing I found extremely useful is if you're working really hard, every 3 hours I take a 15-minute break to sit back and allow my mind to rest. And when you do this and you're working very hard, you'll actually feel certain areas of your brain relaxing. You'll feel, again, I haven't put sensors on it, but what I assume to be buildups of chemicals, because your brain, it takes chemicals and it uses them and it produces whatever molecules are left after it breaks them apart or uses them or whatever happens. Again, not a biologist, or a neuroscientist, but what it feels like to me is my brain uses these chemicals in the aftermath, the waste product of the chemicals builds up and causes headaches or slight aches in my brain. And when I rest for 15 minutes, I'm allowing those chemicals to get flushed out, because especially nowadays, when you're doing a certain task, when you're doing work at a desk, when you're doing engineering, you're focusing on the same activity for hours on end. You're not doing what we used to do as hunter-gatherers, where you'd hunt and then you'd gather water and then you do all these smaller tasks that can require different areas of your brain. You're constantly going through the exact same thought patterns, the exact same brain cells are going to be firing, and those cells need to cool down, they need to relax. So reload. Yeah, I mean, that's it for today. And I'm just walking through this forest. It's absolutely amazing. I think this is the way out, but I think it's one of my new favorite walks to do, even though I might have to come back with it's not a machete, but it's a tool I have at my house for keeping the brush at bay and cutting it back, because there is a lot of poison ivy on this trail. With that being said, remember to breathe. If you made it this far in the video, consider dropping a like, subscribing, leave a comment if you have something that you're interested to have me talk about in a future video. And as always, stay present and enjoy life. One more quick thing I wanted to talk about was relaxed mind shows in a relaxed body. The body follows the mind. And this is one thing I've noticed for myself, if I have a tense face or I'm tensing up my face, then I know my mind is tense in thought, and I can relax my mind and my face will also relax. And it's one of those cues I talk about in, I think a couple of weeks ago I talked about this, but I have certain cues I set up to let me know when I'm not being present. One of them is whether or not I'm tensing up my face or I'm tensing any part of my body. Another is if I feel rushed. The third one is, it's also kind of feeling rushed, but sometimes when I feel rushed and I don't catch the initial feeling, I'll listen to stuff and I'll look at stuff on ×2 speed to try to get it through it faster and go faster. If I'm speeding in my car, it's most likely because I'm not being present and I'm obsessively thinking about how I'm going to be late. And a lot of times people are like, well, sometimes I just need to get there faster. That is a valid point, but you can also communicate with someone. You could send someone a text message and be like, hey man, I'm going to be a little bit late. And as long as you can give them a decent amount or a decent enough head start or notice, no one cares. I mean, a while ago when I was doing eBay, I have this uptight personality and I'm just way too pent up. So the story goes, I was away on vacation and my brother told me he would cover my shipments. But he got extremely sick and had to take care of his family. So eBay just didn't get shipped out, and I was stressing out about this. I was worrying about this. I'm like, it's going to affect my seller rating. My feedback's going to go down. Everyone's going to be messaging me. And what I did is I sent out a message to people. I'm like, I'm really sorry, but due to a family emergency, you're not going to get your package for a week. I mean, I'm going to ship it personally when I get back, but there is a delay. If you want, I can cancel your order and issue a full refund right now. You know what happened? Not a single person actually canceled their order. Everyone hit me up. They're like, oh, no, I hope things go better. I hope you fix the family emergency. I hope you get, like, it's fine if it comes a little bit late. I was just like, it blew my mind because I was obsessing about it. I was stressing about it. And I was like, what are they going to say? What are they going to think? It's going to be late. It's going to be late. Like, they're like, it's cool, man. Like, stuff comes up. And I was like, wow, like, people are actually a lot more reasonable than, at least for me personally, I would think. So if you can communicate stuff to them and let them know what's happening, you don't have to rush places. Again, if I hid the fact that, if I didn't tell them anything, and then a week later they're like, why don't I have my package? It would have been bad. But because I communicated, because I told them what was happening, it worked out amazing. So set up these tripwires or whatever you want to call them to let yourself know when you're no longer being present.